In Srimad Bhagavatam, in the fourth canto, 30th chapter, I can't remember the exact verse, but it's in the 30th chapter. The Prachetas say a very important point to Krishna in their prayers. I'm saying this verse because I would request everyone here to reflect on this verse today, and if you're staying on, tomorrow. Because we're all in the assembly of Vaishnavis. And this verse is a very practical verse. But it's also a verse that we can use with audiences who have nothing to do with Krishna and who are very new to Krishna, for example. And if you give them this verse and you get them to think about it, you find that at the end of the day, you will find that at the end of the day, they will actually take back this verse and they will believe that there must be something more to what we are doing in terms of preaching, in terms of speaking about Krishna. So the Prachetas say, Yatra idyante katham ristas, Trishnayaha prasammo yataha, Nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, Notvega yatra kaschana. Yatra idyante means wherever and whomever that comes together. Yatra idyante katham ristas. Wherever there are audiences coming together and the topics of Krishna are being discussed. Now, katham ristas is very broad. It just doesn't mean that we're discussing philosophy about Krishna consciousness. It could be that we chanted the Hare Krishna mantra. That's also katha. So, the Prachetas say, wherever the topics of Krishna are discussed or chanted or sung, three things will happen to the audience. First, Trishnayaha prasammo yataha. Prasammo means to become satisfied. Trishnaya means hankerings. So whatever material hankerings that we have in our hearts, Bhagavatam tells us that the moment we put Krishna in the center, or the moment we attempt to connect with Krishna, either through the pages of Bhagavatam, or through chanting of the holy names, or through association of devotees, the moment that is done, then whatever material hankerings that are troubling us in our hearts, and everyone in this material world is constantly being troubled by hankerings. And these hankerings can come at the most inopportune time. Just when we think that we are free of one material hankering, another material hankering can come. And very often it can come in a social setting, because we are socializing and we're talking to each other. And suddenly we hear that I've bought a new car, or I've got a new house, or I've got something else that you don't have. And the mind immediately starts becoming the reservoir for hankering. Oh, he's wearing a nice kurta, I wish I could buy that. Or he's having he's done his fill up very nicely. Of course that's very lofty hankering. But in the material world, that is not the case. We often compare ourselves to each other, and there's no end to material hankerings. But when we come together and speak about Krishna, and you can test this, you've been here for a long time, since morning, how much material hankerings have actually disturbed you? You will realize that hardly, your mind actually has not even had the time, right, to be in that mode of material hankering. That's why Shastras tell us, you need time for two things to happen. The first thing you need time for is for criticisms. If you want to criticize someone, you need time to criticize them. But if you don't have time, because your time is well managed in the use of for Krishna consciousness, then there is no time to look at what is good, what is bad. There's only time to study, to read, to apply, and to serve. The second thing that's very important that you need time for is actually time to fall sick. Very often, if we have a lot of time in our hands, or if we have a lot of time in our hands and we are not regulated, then our health will fall. But if you have difficulties in health, but you continue with Krishna consciousness, you find somehow or another Krishna gives you the ability to get yourself through it. So, yatra idyante katham ristas, first point, Trishnayaha prasammo yataha. That's the first thing, material hankerings. The second thing that happens is Nirvaira sarva bhuteshu. Sarva bhuteshu means to all living entities. Nirvaira is translated in the shloka as being free of envy. if this was a social setting, in the sense that if we all came here for a 3-day wedding, for example, right? The atmosphere will be completely different. Completely different. And how will it be mostly different? It will be in our consciousness. At this moment, I've been observing all of you. No one is looking at the other person. You're either looking at the beautiful deities, or you have to look at me. You have no choice, right? You have to look at me. So you have to look at me. But other than that, you're not looking at each other. What is he wearing? You know, how much gold does she have? Or you know, what is he not wearing? You know, in a temple, in a wedding setting, that's what happens. In a social setting, that's what happens. We go into what we call bragging rights mode, and we spend so much time doing that. And the reason for that is happening. The reason why that happens is because it is the outlet for our envy of each other. We're constantly looking at each other, and that's why envy and hankering are actually cousins. There is a strong link between the level of your hankering and the amount of envy you have. They really grow together in proportion. But the lower your hankering is, the less your envy is also. We have been here for 2 days now, Friday, Saturday. We're moving into Sunday, today's Sunday. And you will find that devotees have not had time to think of things that way, because we've just been engaged by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So Nirvaira Sarvabhuteshu. And the third point that Bhagavatam brings up is really nice. Nodvega yatra kaschana. Udvega in Sanskrit is fear. Na udvega means no fear. Vega normally means fear, udvega means great fear, and na udvega means no fear. So, nodvega, na udvega, yatra kaschana. And the third symptom that happens to the audience when they hear about Krishna is that whatever fear that is in our hearts, they're all left outside with our slippers. We don't have any feelings of fear coming into this retreat. When we walk into an interview, when we walk into the material world, when we have to work, when we have to do so many other things with material energy, at the heart of our hearts, there's always this level of fear. If it's not fear, there's the cousin of fear, that's anxiety. There's always this anxiety. I understand in Canada, Monday is a holiday, right? Yeah. So, you know, if Monday wasn't a holiday and Sunday night came and you had a good feast program and there was wonderful kirtan, and when you go home and things become quiet, then your mind starts thinking, oh, Monday's work. And then all the anxieties of what I have to do will come. Right? It happens to me because Monday is a court case that's going to come. My judge is really grumpy, and I'm going to have a very difficult time with the judge. It happens, you know. 2 weeks ago, I was in front of a judge, and I said, "Good morning, Your Honor." And she looked at me and said, "What is so good morning? What is so good about this morning, Mr. Siva?" And I thought this is going to be a bad day in court. And I said, "Your Honor, I meant it as a term of respect." "Ah, so you didn't mean it." "You just said it, right? You just said it." And I said, "No, Your Honor, I didn't mean it that way. Just get on with the case, Mr. Siva. Don't waste my time." And I tell you, she gave me more hell, right, than even my client, which is not supposed to be the case. So nodvega yatra kaschana. So it shows us that when we take up Krishna consciousness, the process is so perfect. If there is any moment that you feel hankering in your heart, if there are moments when you feel that envy is disturbing you, if there are moments when we feel that there's so much fear and anxiety about things, then Bhagavatam gives us the royal road. And this royal road is yatra idyante kathamristas. Just be within the katha space of Krishna consciousness. And that's why this retreat is so enlivening. You know, I've been to many retreats, but this retreat is really, really nice. I'm saying that with all my heart. You know, I'm really sick. I'm not well. You know, I can hardly breathe. But I'm very happy. And that's not supposed to be the case, right? Not when you're sick. Yeah. But I'm very happy. Not because I'm leaving today, but because I wish I had more time. But this is the point. Krishna consciousness actually works. Sometimes when we are in the material world, the material energy gives us so many favorable arguments to say that, well, it doesn't sound logical. You know, well, yeah, this, but the reality is something else. This is the reality. This is the reality. We have to remember that. That is very important. And against that point, I want you to take back this verse. And I want you to ask yourself at the end of the retreat, when you sign out and you leave, did these three things actually affect us? And if so, to what level when we were in the midst of Sadhu Sangha? And you'll find that it actually worked. And I've tried this to university students, I've tried this with professors, I've tried this with people who are completely atheistic. And I've just quoted this verse for them, literally. And I've told them that three things will not affect you if you're listening about this point of Bhagavatam. And at the end of it, they all come back and tell me, you know what? It actually worked. It actually worked. And they don't even know who Krishna is. Krishna is so powerful that he can be present in the manifestation of the qualities that we feel when we take up Krishna consciousness. We may not even have the language to understand who Krishna is, but we can feel his presence, even if we don't understand who he is. It cannot happen in the material world, but it can only happen in the spiritual world. And the spiritual world is right here with us, because we are in the middle of Krishna. Ritéritam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidvan atmano mayam yatha baso yatha tamaha. The first Chatushloka of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the defining shloka for all of us. And what is Brahma told by Krishna? That anything in this world that appears valuable, and there are many things in this world that appear valuable, but if it is not connected to me, O Brahma, right, it has no value. This is the way we should live our life. Hridayaritam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani. This is the knowledge, tat vidvan atmano mayam. This is the knowledge that we should have. If we are guided by this at every stage of our life, then anything that appears to be valuable, but if it cannot be connected to Krishna, then what happens? It will actually drag us down to the material rules of nature. So that's why we're going to talk about this. That's the framing for what we're discussing today. How many of you were here for the first day when we spoke about this? Okay, actually it's very few, I think because Friday was like the starting of the day, of the retreat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very quick summary for everyone else, because in Bhagavatam, there is a chapter, right, in the first canto, 14th chapter, where Yudhishthira Maharaj has already sent Arjuna. He's asked Arjuna, Arjuna had himself gone over to Dwarka and he spent several months there. Why? Because he wanted to spend time with Krishna, and he also wanted to spend time with the friends of Krishna. So Yudhishthira Maharaj let him go. And this was after the Great War had ended and decimated the population of the Kurus. Don't forget that Yudhishthira Maharaj was feeling very repentant and guilty about the war and the outcome of the war. This was also just after Dhritarashtra had left for the north because of the great transcendental instructions of that exalted personality Vidura. So therefore, when Arjuna also left, and many months passed by, Bhagavatam tells us that Yudhishthira Maharaj began observing, I'm just going to get to that, Yudhishthira Maharaj began observing many inauspicious signs. And these many inauspicious signs were there. And he began to think in his heart that this must be because Krishna may have disappeared from this world. But he had not received any confirmation yet. And so he was waiting. And then after 7 to 8 months, Arjuna comes back. And when Arjuna comes back, Bhagavatam tells us, and here it is stated very nicely, Arjuna came back and there were tears in his eyes. And he appeared very dejected. So, in this part of the chapter, the entire discussion is on why Arjuna is dejected. And actually, when Yudhishthira Maharaj sees his brother looking so dejected, immediately he got worried. And he started asking, first of all, about the welfare of the inhabitants of Dwarka. And he began asking, how is Ugrasena? How is Vasudev? How are all the other residents? How is Krishna? But then after speaking that way, Yudhishthira Maharaj became very sensitive to Arjuna. He realized that maybe the whole problem isn't about Dwarka also. Maybe it's also about how my brother is feeling. And that's a very important point. Because sometimes what happens is, when we are dejected or when we see others dejected, it's very easy to not really understand why they are being dejected. We may just cursorily or superficially, we may just ask someone, what's wrong with you? But it's very different when we ask the right questions. I think Vraj Vihari Prabhu did an amazing course on that, or a lecture, or a session on asking the right questions. And so this is what happened here. Yudhishthira Maharaj then became personal. He became loving towards his brother. And he said then that what is wrong? He inquired, Prabhupada writes, about his personal welfare. And that should be the mood of devotees. Every stage of our lives, we are always being challenged, even though we have taken up Krishna consciousness. Sometimes it appears as if because we have taken up Krishna consciousness, that we are subjected to so many challenges. And therefore, it becomes everybody's duty, not just the leaders, but everyone is a leader in a community, because everyone has to lead. If someone is in difficulty, someone must take the lead to serve that person. That's leadership. You don't have to wait for someone to do that. And Yudhishthira Maharaj inquired about the personal welfare of Arjuna. And that's what we should do too. Sorry. And then he asked, Prabhupada says, so many vital questions. So there are 11 questions that Yudhishthira Maharaj will ask Arjuna. And I'm going to go through them briefly because time is of the essence. We did about 3 or 4 the last time, but I think we can very quickly go through them. I'm very happy to share these slides with all of you. Would you like these slides? Yes. Right, so it's very comprehensive actually. I'm one of those people who likes to write slides in full sentences. The advantage of that is that you can use them and you don't have to look at one word and figure out what did it mean, It's easier this way, and then you do what you want with the slides, right? So I'll share them with you. But the shlokas are given. It's 114, 39 to 44. So let's look at these shlokas. The first question that Arjuna was asked by Yudhishthira Maharaj was, tell me whether your health is all right. You appear to have lost your bodily luster. And this is very important. Bodily luster is tejas. It's effulgence. And sometimes when health comes, it can actually show on us. When health isn't there, it actually shows on us. And that's why this is the most important question he started by asking. And this point is also substantiated in 1-10 of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a very famous verse. But there, Shukadeva Goswami says that we may not have a right in the sense that our desires, life's desires should not be directed towards sense gratification, but we can desire a healthy life. Because if this body as a vehicle is healthy, then it becomes a very good instrument for Krishna consciousness. And therefore health is really wealth in that sense, right? You can have all the wealth in the world and all the best doctors in the world, but if your health is deteriorating and no one can help you, then we are in a helpless and a hopeless situation. Krishnadas Prabhu, you keep looking at me with great knowledge and enlightenment, so I think you've seen enough of that. That is true. So, the other thing about health that Bhagavatam gives us, and I think today, in today's world, people have caught up with it, that health just doesn't start with the body and ends with the body. Very often, if your mind is disturbed, then your mind's disturbance will eventually transfer itself to your body. Isn't it true? If someone disturbs you so much, after a while, the symptoms of their disturbance manifest in your body. You become tired, you become unhealthy, and that's why the seat and the root challenge for health is actually an uncontrolled mind. If the mind is regulated and the mind is engaged, and this is where everyone in a community has the responsibility. You may think the responsibility of my mind is my business, but the responsibility of the devotee next to you is to keep you engaged in Krishna consciousness. If they can always keep you engaged in the sense of always reaching out to you to perform Krishna conscious activities, then even if your mind has that space to grow neglected and to grow in material consciousness, it will be forced to move into Krishna consciousness. That is the greatest benefit of a community that looks after each other's personal welfare. And that's why this very important verse is there, and that I shared this verse with you. In this verse, Rahugana is told by Janabharat, in the concluding verse of the 5th canto, 11th chapter, that, O king, this uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. And I also said that Prahlad Maharaj says the same thing to his father, Hiranyakashipu. And this is minutes before Hiranyakashipu is torn up, because he doesn't learn his lesson, isn't it? What does Prahlad Maharaj tell his father? He tells his father, there are no friends and enemies actually. There is only one enemy, an unconquered mind. The unconquered mind is your greatest enemy. So sometimes we may look at circumstances disturbing us. They are there. They are not going to go away. And they will keep coming like waves. But our challenge is, can we apply our mind to Krishna consciousness? So the verse tells us there are only 2 ways to conquer the mind. Very clear. And the weapon is service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And that spiritual master may not be Diksha Guru. Very often the spiritual master is your Siksha. Because he or she is the one guiding you in Krishna consciousness. Serve these devotees. Serve the devotees. And serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he ends by saying, do this with great care. In other words, don't take this for granted. Now, the second reason for neglect, and this comes up in the shloka, and Arjuna is being asked by Yudhishthira Maharaj, okay, if it's not your health, then did someone disrespect or neglect you because of your long stay in Dwarka? And I really like this point. You know, if we had a retreat that lasted 2 weeks, right? I'm not sure how we would be. You know, of course, we could all become sannyasis and brahmacharis, we'll give up everything. But sometimes overstaying is also a problem. When you stay too long with one another, it's very easy to take each other for granted. If you're doing services together after a while, you may just forget how wonderful a Vaishnava or Vaishnavi is who's next to you. And in that way, what happens is you may start to disrespect them, and you may even start to neglect them. Have we been in situations where we've really taken our best friend in devotional service for granted, not seeing the signs that they're not doing well, they're upset, because we neglect them? It can happen. Sometimes in devotional service, out of sight is also out of mind. We may not see someone for a long time, and in that way, we may just forget about them. Of course, we have so many other things to happen, but if they really were, if they were important to us, we would spend the time to look out for them. So, Yudhishthira Maharaj asked 2 very important questions. And the word neglect is so, so powerful. Because sometimes neglect is actually more painful than being scolded. If someone came up to you and told you, you know, I don't like what you did, that's okay, you've heard it, you know what's happened. What if they decide to, you know, blockade you for 5 days? Or the temple president decides, you know what, no more prasadam for this person, we'll neglect him for the next 10 weeks. That will be a nightmare, right? It will be a nightmare. So therefore, neglect in our society is something we should be very careful about. Because it can very quickly lead to dejection. That we feel out of place. We feel that we don't belong. And we are, Prabhupada says we are social animals. And we are not an island. There is a great need for us to feel a sense of belonging. I don't belong to this community. I've just come to see you. But I can say that in the last 1.5 to 2 days, I have not felt like I don't belong. Because so many devotees whom I've never met have just spontaneously come up, asked me if I'm alright, is there anything I can do for you? That is a hallmark of a good community. Because you're taking pains to make sure someone is not neglected. So that's very important. And therefore, we also have this verse. This verse is 1:1848 of Srimad Bhagavatam. And here it is stated that sometimes devotees are subjected to great calamities. Prabhupada writes here, or translates, devotees can be defamed. And that happens. Sometimes our reputation is very good, but someone is envious of us and they try to say things that are not true, and we are defamed. By the way, you can sue for defamation. But that's it. Sometimes we are cheated, right? We're cheated. We thought someone said something to us and it turns out to be completely different. Sometimes people curse us. Parikshit Maharaj is the greatest example. He was cursed. And very often we are disturbed. Even if you could be minding your own business in Krishna consciousness for 10 years, and the 11th year, someone could walk into your life and disturb you. It can happen, right? And then look at the word neglect. Neglect. The last one, hopefully, it's not happening very often. Nobody's killing us for being, for being out of step or anything. But these are things that can happen to devotees. It happened to Parikshit Maharaj. In Bhagavatam, it happened to so many devotees. Why can't it happen to us? It may. But this is also a source of great deject and great neglect. And when you neglect someone, you also disrespect them. This is very important. And that's why it's so important for us. One thing that I find in communities that I go to, especially when you have senior devotees, is that the chances of us neglecting senior devotees is potentially higher. They may not come as often as they do. They may get tired. They may not be able to come for programs like they did. They may, because of health concerns, they may be spending more time away from the temple. We are too busy in the temple, and before you know it, there's this large time where we don't know where they are. And from time to time, they just come. Which is why a community needs to address this. There needs to be programs, for example, where the community, especially new people who join the community, should always know who were the pillars who built the community. And they should know that these are the pillars, and they are very much available. And when we engage devotees who may have spent many years giving their all to Krishna consciousness, but perhaps they are in their twilight of their years, when we engage them that way as resource, as institutional knowledge and wisdom, they will feel very respected. They will feel very belonged. And I think that's a very important part of how to grow as a community. And Krishna becomes so pleased, because when a devotee is disrespected or neglected, how can Krishna be pleased with our behavior? So this is very important. One more point that's important is, we disrespect people because we think that we're going to live forever. Think about it. We don't realize that the law of karma is very powerful and very stringent. And if we are not behaving well with Vaishnavas, well, that boomerang effect is going to come back to us eventually. The third thing that comes up, that is a source of dejection, a question asked by Arjuna. And this is an interesting question. Yudhishthira asks. Yudhishthira says to Arjuna, Arjuna, has someone addressed you with unfriendly words? Or have they threatened you? It's very hard to think of anyone threatening Arjuna, isn't it? Right? But it's an important question. Sometimes when we come to a temple, are we greeted with friendly words? And that becomes a source of joy for us, a source of inspiration for us. Just a smile from someone can make such a difference for us. And therefore, this question is so important. In Bhagavatam, it is always stated that our language should be what we call Priya Vakya. Priya Vakya means language which is sweet. If we want to state even that which is unpalatable but truthful, then the etiquette of our Vaishnava culture is that it can be spoken in truth, but it can be spoken with sweet words. There's nothing wrong with that. And if a Vaishnava or Vaishnavi has to speak something which is direct, because the intent in the heart is not to hurt, then what is spoken will be well accepted. I mentioned the case of Vidura, of how Vidura was apparently harsh in his language with Dhritarashtra. But because Vidura was a pure devotee, and therefore his intentions to reach out to Dhritarashtra was pure, Krishna allowed that Dhritarashtra would accept in his heart that his brother meant love for him, that his brother meant well for him. And so Dhritarashtra took it, and he went to the north, and Gandhari also went. So in this way, Vaishnavas always minimize the pain in others' heart by always using friendly words as much as possible. If that is the case, then threats are even worse. We should never in our dream even think that we should address devotees and living entities in any such language, right? It goes, Krishna is so kind because he puts me in an occupation where from Monday to Friday we actually send letters which are very threatening. Right? And whenever I write those letters, I just ask myself, what am I doing here? Right? But it also gives me a perspective that as I write these letters, I should also be able to understand that the person receiving the letter on the other end is going to become very, very disturbed. Sometimes with such persons, we have to rattle the cage. But I think in a community of devotees, there is no justification for threats. There is no justification. So if anyone is threatened, as your general counsel, I would be very happy to know why such threats are actually happening, right? So that's something aside. But this is an important verse that we also quoted. What happens, as Vraj Vihari Prabhu said, you apologize. What is the mood of the person apologizing? And then what is the mood of the person receiving the apology? So sometimes in a community, we mustn't always expect that all these devotees around us will be perfect and that they're all floating in the air like Vaikuntha children and they will do the right things all the time. Everyone is struggling with the material modes of nature. And that's why this shloka from Bhagavatam is very relevant, because it gives us the proper attitude that we should also have when we are faced with a situation where others could be harassing us. Others could be saying words which are not very priya vakya. What should be our mood? Bhagavatam again gives us a beautiful point. Bhutai akramyamano api dhiro daivo vasa anugai. Dhiro means dhiraha. Daivo means providential arrangement. And see the translation. A sober person, even when harassed by other living beings, should understand that his aggressors are acting helplessly under the control of God. And thus, he should never be distracted from the progress of his own path. This is important. This also ties up very nicely with Vraj Vihari Prabhu's emphasis on the Tatenukampam verse. Because in the Tatenukampam verse, the mood of the devotee is that whatever that's coming in terms of difficulties and challenges, the devotee's lenses is not to outwardly blame people, but to inwardly introspect on our own actions and our own behavior. And this verse is a supplement to that verse, because it tells us that actually other people are also struggling with their minds. And sometimes if you don't understand why someone came out in the wrong way, maybe they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Maybe they got, maybe somebody fired them at home and they came out, being very upset. Have you met devotees where you say Hare Krishna every day to each other, and one day you pass by the person, you say Hare Krishna, he or she just looks away. Now immediately the mind becomes disturbed. What did I say? What did I do? Or why is the devotee behaving that way? Now if we are immature about it, then what we would do is we would counteract. So we would say, fine, he didn't wish me Hare Krishna, right? I'm just waiting for the next opportunity. Because the next time he walks past me and say, Hare Krishna Prabhu, I'm just going to look away. And then he will start to think, why did he do that? And then he will say, never mind, then the next time I'm not going to say Hare Krishna. And I've seen cases where 15 years devotees don't speak to each other. And when I actually ask them, why haven't you spoken to each other? They actually scratch their heads and they say, you know what? I don't really know why. I can't even remember. I just know that we haven't spoken for a long time. This is because we don't understand that the material modes of nature are very powerful. And even sometimes if we want to do the right things, the modes can actually cause us to act in a helpless manner. That's not an excuse for you to go around slapping people and say, sorry, the modes of material nature, it just happened. But I think you get the point. And that's why this verse is important. The point in the verse is, we shouldn't be distracted from our devotional service. Srila Swami says in the Tatenukampam verse, very nicely, he says, what the verse tells us is just keep your head above water. Just be alive in Krishna consciousness until the day when you have to go back home, back to Godhead. And that's what we should do. No matter what happens, never become distracted from the path of our devotional service. The moment we do that, yatha vaso yatha tamaha, will be dragged down. And then I also discussed this point. Parikshit Maharaj says a beautiful prayer that should we come back again to this world. Of course, we're all hoping that we'll go back home, back to Godhead. And we are hoping by the end of this life we'll never come back. But in the outside chance that we come back, and that's a deliberate pause, in the outside chance that we come back, then 3 prayers. This prayer is very nice. This is the famous Punascha Bhuyat verse. He says that I pray for 3 things. I pray to be completely attached to Krishna, who's unlimited. I pray to have association with his devotees. And the third point is really important for maturity in Krishna consciousness. I pray to have friendly relations with all living beings. The problem sometimes as a community is we are very, very careful to treat each other very well. And then we go home and we are terrors to our parents and our colleagues, and we don't care how we are with anybody else, because you know what? They're not Krishna conscious. So what does it matter? If that is our reasoning, then we've got Krishna consciousness all wrong. Because then what we are doing is we're trying to collect brownie points to make sure that we have all the boxes ticked. But loving relations with all living entities means that we actually try to see the hand of Krishna in everyone. And that's why Bhagavatam tells us that the Lord becomes very satisfied when his devotee greets other people, not just other devotees, with 4 very important qualities: tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. So this is a very important point that comes up from the question that Arjuna has put, that Yudhishthira has put forward. Now, this is another question that he brings up. And this question is an important question. He tells Arjuna, Arjuna, could it be that you didn't give charity to one who asked? And could it be that you did not keep your promise to someone? There are 2 questions there actually. And this point here is really important. Charity to the needy is something that sometimes we take for granted. But Prabhupada writes actually, when asked for a donation, it is the duty of the possessor of wealth to give charity in consideration of the person, place, and time. Charity may not just be a donation in terms of money, but charity can be something that is the need of the hour. That is a deeper understanding of charity. If you have something that is available as what you have, and it is capable of helping someone else, especially in Krishna consciousness, then what you give to them is that which is given in service and in charity. That's why Prabhupada writes here, if a rich man fails to comply with his obligation, he must be very sorry for this discrepancy. And devotees are very rich. Our richness is not just the richness of money. Our richness is the opulence of devotional service. And giving devotional service to others and sharing it is the best charity. And therefore, when you ask this question, have you given charity to one who is deserving? The question really for us is, have we done something to give Krishna to someone else? And you'll find when you try to give Krishna to someone else, whatever dejection that's in your heart, you actually get uplifted. How many of us have gone for book distribution? It's the most uplifting experience, isn't it? You know how fortunate you are in Canada to go out there on the street and be able to distribute books. If I did that in Singapore, I'll end up distributing books in the jail. Right? No book distribution, no house to house, you can't do it. But the only way you can do it is set up a table somewhere and beg someone for permission to set it up. But the point is, when you can give someone something which is very precious, that is real charity. And that's why the shloka of 6:10:6 is very important. So that's one aspect. The other aspect of charity is in this verse. This is one of the most amazing verses in Bhagavatam, because it tells us how sensitive devotees should be actually. Look at the verse. Those who are too self-interested beg something from others, not knowing of others' pain. But if the beggar knew the difficulty of the giver, he would not ask for anything. Now the verse reverses the situation. Similarly, he who is able to give charity does not know the beggar's difficulty, for otherwise he would not refuse to give the beggar anything he might want as charity. So Bhagavatam, there is a common theme running in Bhagavatam. And that theme that's running in Bhagavatam is that we should always put ourselves in the shoes of others. It's such an important thing. You see, all the great personalities of Bhagavatam were defined by how they could always be compassionate to the other living entities. Compassion cannot come until we try to put ourselves in someone's shoes. And that's why he asked this question. Could you not give charity to one who asked? Because charity would mean to understand the other person's situation. Not just empathize, but after empathizing, to be compassionate. So every time that we think we are in difficulty because of someone, it's very important to also ask ourselves the question, perhaps the other person is seeing it the other way around. And that helps us to reduce our anger. It helps us to become less self-absorbed. Because after a while we think the whole world is against me. Or it's me versus the whole world. That happens too. But it's not. Because every living entity, without exception, is actually suffering in this material world. Which is why charity is about sacrifice. And sacrifice is really about the upliftment of others. The best shloka, one of my favorite shlokas, is 8.7.44. Lord Shiva is about to drink that terrible poison. What's the name of that poison? I love the poison names in Bhagavatam, right? It's very, it has a zing to it. So before he drinks the poison, this is one of the great shlokas that comes towards the end of the chapter. Tapyante lokatapena sadhavaha prayasho janaha. Then look at the next slide. Parama aradhanam taddihi purusha akila atmanaha. And the translation is beautiful. It is said of great personalities that they always accept voluntary sufferings. Notice the word accept. If we voluntarily serve someone, we have to accept that we are actually serving them. If we voluntarily try to serve someone and we expect that after I have served them, something must come out of that, then that's not charity. Expectation and acceptance. They sound alike, but they're very different. In Bhagavatam, all the great devotees accepted their situations. And because they accepted, they could grow in their devotion and faith. But you notice that the demons, for example, they never stopped expecting for something. And because of that expectation, they were never ever peaceful and they were always frustrated. Look at the Ravanas, the Hiranyakashipus, the Kamsas. Kamsa was an insomniac, he could never sleep. Most of these demons never slept very well. But in the Mahabharata, Arjuna took a vow to kill Jayadratha. And Mahabharata says that night he slept very well. But Krishna was pacing. And Krishna was very anxious and thinking, I'm very sure Arjuna would not be sleeping very well because he has taken a vow. And that vow is a terrible vow because if he doesn't get past that vow, then he will jump into the fire. So Krishna walks to the tent of Arjuna, thinking that Arjuna must be very anxious. But to his surprise, Arjuna is sleeping very well. And he asks Arjuna, how are you sleeping but I'm awake? And Arjuna says, I'm sleeping because you are awake. because Arjuna had the faith that whatever happens, I will accept it. Why? 11:33 of Bhagavad Gita. Mayai vaite nihata purva eva nimitta matra bhavya savya sachi. Krishna has already told Arjuna that by my arrangement, everyone who should die on the battlefield will die. You just become an instrument in my hands. So when devotees accept that we are instruments, it becomes a much easier way to take up Krishna consciousness. And I'll tell you one other thing. A knife in the hand of a robber can cause hurt or even kill. The knife in the hand of a surgeon can heal. But either way, a knife is just a knife. There's no liability attached to the knife. No one sues a knife, right? Everyone sues the person who uses the knife. Either way. And therefore, this mood of sacrifice, expectation versus acceptance is something we should really think about. Okay, we're coming towards the end. In text 40, there is another part to the question. And this question is, could you not keep your promise to someone? Shastras tell us very nicely this point. If you can't keep a promise, then it's better not to make one. I think that's a very sane way to live. And sometimes we make so many different kinds of promises. And Arjuna is asked, did you make a promise that you could not make could not uphold because he's Kshatriya? But even if we are not Kshatriyas, our word is as good as our deed. And in a community of devotees, if we were to tell someone that I will do this service, I'm going to turn up for Mangalarti and I'm going to do this service, we jolly well turn up. Because our word is so important. Have you realized how when a devotee keeps telling you, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, and they don't do it, they lose credibility after a while. It happens. And that becomes a source of dejection, because Prabhupada says, look at what Prabhupada says in 1:1440. These discrepancies are sometimes causes of despondency, and thus failing, a person becomes subjected to criticism, which might also be the cause of Arjuna's plight. Sometimes we are criticized because we've just set ourselves up for criticisms on account of our un-Vaishnava-like behavior, on our account of saying things that we say and we never fulfill. And that becomes something that's very bad, right? So Lakshmimani Prabhu in January told me about the retreat and said, you have to come. And I said, I'll think about it, you know. But maybe I said I think about it as a promise. I'm not sure, Prabhu. And then the next moment, I get a call from someone who tells me that you're coming to the retreat. And I said, no, I remember saying I'll think about it. And then he showed me the flyer with my face on it and my name on it. And then I realized, oh, okay, that's a promise I have to keep. So I hope, Prabhu, I've kept my promise and that I'm here. But Krishna is held in such high self-esteem by all of us, because Krishna never breaks his promise. The only promise he ever breaks is the promise he makes not to interfere, but that's on him. It's not on anyone else. But the promise to protect his devotees has never been unanswered, and he has never failed. And that's the reason why we have so much faith in Krishna. We don't even realize that. But if you look at the pages of Bhagavatam, because Krishna's promise to us is unreserved, it is uninterrupted, and it is unmotivated. And that promise is what drives us in Krishna consciousness. Subtly, our faith in Krishna's promise is so powerful, so deep, that's the reason that keeps us coming into Krishna consciousness. We may have had difficulties with devotees sometimes, but at the back of our head we know Krishna will never fail us. And I think for all of us, we also know that Srila Prabhupada will never fail us. Because Prabhupada's promise to deliver us, is always there. It is eternal. And that's what we are living on. So keeping a promise is a very important way to staying out of dejection. Then Arjuna is asked by his brother, you are always the protector of the deserving living beings, such as brahmanas, children, cows, women, and the diseased. Could you not give them protection when they approached you for shelter? Prabhupada writes in his purport, those who are always engaged in researching knowledge for society's welfare work, both materially and spiritually, they deserve the protection of the king in all respects. Similarly, children of the state, the cow, the diseased person, the woman, and the old man specifically require the protection of the state or the king. So the question we must ask ourselves is, what protection can we offer? Sometimes we may be contrite and say, Prabhu, everything is in Krishna's hands, I can't offer you any protection. But the truth is, all of us can actually protect each other by being devotees. Devotional service is the best protection. Isn't that so? By performing sincere devotional service, the mind is protected from all challenges. When the mind is protected, hardly anything becomes an issue for us. So therefore, the best protection we can give each other is to help each other stay in good, solid, sincere devotional service. Not just wait for someone to do it for someone, but we take up the initiative to actually go out there and protect. And when we look at these different categories, persons who are old, women, and children, you don't even need to be a devotee. Even in the secular world, this is considered a value that must be upheld. How much more it should be upheld in a society of devotees? It's actually, in one sense, a no-brainer. We have to do that. And therefore, we cannot say that I cannot offer protection. The protection that we offer is our attempts to share devotional service and to serve the devotees and to give them a safe environment where they can grow in devotional service. Protection of our Krishna consciousness and our consciousness is very, very important. And that is the key foundation for protection. Now, we come to text 42. Now, he's asked another question. Have you contacted a woman of impeachable character? Or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Or have you been defeated on the way by someone who is inferior or equal to you? Two questions here. But the first question that he asks, Prabhupada writes beautifully, contact between man and woman is natural. But that also must be carried out under regulative principles, so that social consecration, I just love that word that he uses, social consecration may not be disturbed. Therefore, regulation of relationship between man and woman will actually come when there is respect for women as there is respect for men. This is a very important, essential quality. And the moment we have that genuine respect, then the regulative principles of how we behave with each other will very quickly fall into place. One very important point about dealings between men and women is something that Malti Prabhu touched on yesterday, which I really was inspired. The point she brought up about Sita, the power of a woman. Disrespect to women can actually mean the destruction, not just of our behavior, but even of an entire community. Ravana's great Lanka fell to pieces because of his disrespect to Sita. It is there. It is very clear. The entire Kuru race was decimated in the disrespect it had to Draupadi Mata. And if you look at both these episodes, you realize that the impact is not only on one person, the impact shudders through an entire community. Therefore, when we keep the chastity of the relationship between man and woman strong, and we follow what Srila Prabhupada has given us and Bhagavatam has given us, that becomes a very essential way to avoid dejection and despondence. The last point on this that's really important is even, we see in Bhagavatam, for example, the episode of Ajamil. Ajamil saw the movement and interaction between a man and woman. And when he saw that, that itself was enough to cause so much of disturbance within his heart. And that disturbance destroyed his life for years and years and years to come. As a community, one last point that's really important on this is perception is very often as powerful, if not more powerful than reality. I'll give you a very simple example of a story that I've heard very often, especially when you go to India. And I spent a lot of time in Dwarkadam, and there's this story in Dwarkadam. There was a sannyasi living in an ashram, and as sannyasis are, they're very strict with their vows. And one day there was a storm, and there was a lady who passed through because the ashram was quite far away from the city. And what happened was she had no other shelter, and she didn't know what to do. So she approached the sannyas ashram and said if she could stay there. And the sannyasi said that we would be happy to help you. The only problem is this is not the place. We don't have any facilities for you. So we'll just leave you to do what you have to do. You have to find your way. Now, the village wasn't very far away. She could have gone to the village. The sannyasis could have been kind enough to point her to the village, but they completely neglected her, and they went on their things. But she again knocked on the door and she asked, please help us. And so finally they said, fine, there is a small hut on the outpost. You can just take that for the night and you can stay there. And she stayed there. Now, of course, she was all drenched because it was a rainy night, and she decided she had to wash her clothes. So she washed the clothes, and she didn't know where the clothesline was. So in the dark, she saw the clothesline, and she put her clothes on the clothesline. Next morning, people from the village, they have to go to the river, and they are passing by the ashram. Now, they don't see the lady because she's not there and she's inside. They don't see the sannyasis because they've gone to do whatever they have to do. But they only saw the clothesline. And on the clothesline, they saw saffron robes, and just next to it, they saw the lady's clothes. When they just saw these two different clothings on the same clothesline, the whole village became disturbed because they felt, what is this about? So, for a community to make sure that this kind of disturbance doesn't happen, we will have to create a very strong value system where respect and understanding how we behave with each other and how they can be viewed wrongly or rightfully is something that's very important. Not just as an example, but as a way of living also. Srila Prabhupada was very strict, for example. If he met, even if he were to meet a lady disciple, my understanding, and many Prabhupada's disciples have told me, he would not do so in an isolated surrounding at all. Or he would have a personal servant present. So these may be small things, but they can affect a community. And that's why this question is a very important question. And the question goes to the contact and the regulative principles that we have between the two genders. The other question that comes up here is the question of defeat. He asks Arjuna, were you defeated on the way by someone who's inferior or equal to you? Prabhupada says it's a Kshatriya thing, right? You cannot be defeated. Kshatriyas don't like it when they're defeated. If any one of you has a Kshatriya mood, you will know you don't like to lose, okay? Someone just put up their hand, that's good. So you know it when you don't like to lose. That's a very Kshatriya mood. And naturally, being defeated by others lead us to dejection. That is very true. But the truth of the matter is, no matter how many challenges we may win, ultimately, if you look at this material world, the nature of the material world is that you will become defeated. Your body will defeat you. Your senses will defeat you. The process of deterioration in this material world will defeat you. Therefore, how can you conquer these things? There's only one way to conquer it. And this is a beautiful shloka. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udire. The best way to conquer anything in this world is actually through hearing and reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because Bhagavatam is the very means of conquest. On our own, there is nothing we can conquer in this world. We can't even conquer our mind. We can't control our blood pressure, for God's sakes. And here we are trying to think we can conquer so many things. But if daily we are in touch with Bhagavatam, just touching Bhagavatam even, you know. I remember the first time I got the Bhagavad Gita, I was 13 years old. It was in 1983. And I remember I just loved that edition of Bhagavad Gita, and I loved the Bhagavatam. I received my first set of Bhagavatam in 83, and it was the one printed in Singapore, the small ones, 48 of them. And I remember I just would bring them to school. I'll put them in my bag, I'll bring them to school, and I wouldn't read a single page. But the thought that they were in my bag and they looked very good, that was my incentive. So I didn't do anything. So I'll just take it out in the bus. I would just touch the page, open it, oh, it looks really good. And then I'll close it and go back to school. And it happened for a while. And then one day I thought, since I'm opening the page, maybe I should just read it. And I started reading it. And I never stopped reading it. Bhagavatam conquers us. It does. And that's why Arjuna was very happy to be conquered by Krishna. Look at this beautiful prayer that Arjuna gives in 1:15-21. Tadvai danusta ishavasa rato hayaste soham rati nipratayo yata anamanti sarvam shanena tad abud asa ishariktai bhasmanutam kuhakam ruddam ivuktam isham. Look at the shloka. I have the very same Gandiva bow, the same arrow, the same chariot, drawn by the same horses. And I use them as the same Arjuna, whom all the kings offered due respect. But in the absence of Lord Krishna, all of them, at a moment's notice, have become null and void. Arjuna accepted. In those prayers of the 15th chapter, he accepts that actually all that I did in the Mahabharata war was by his grace and his mercy. A devotee who has the mood that he is conquered or she is conquered by Krishna, that Krishna is the means of conquest, then they have no issues in this world if they are defeated by the material modes of nature. Ultimately, we are all going to be materially bankrupt, right? No matter how much money you have in your bank, I've got good news for you. You're not taking it with you. And if you ask your wife or your husband, look, I'm going to leave the world, why don't you join me? They'll probably politely decline and tell you that you've got a lot of property right here, someone needs to manage it. And that's what they will do. So we will not be able to take anything. Our sharir we cannot take with us, because it'll end up either on the funeral pyre or in the ground. So what are we taking? And I think the last point, the second last verse, have you not taken care of old men and boys who deserve to dine with you? Have you left them and taken your meals alone? Have you committed some unpardonable mistake, which is considered to be abominable? And Prabhupada writes so nicely, it's the duty of a householder to feed first of all the children, the old members of the family, and the invalids. You notice that there is a kind of a overlap, because Prabhupada talks about protection of the needy before this, and he also talks about taking care, again, of this point. Yudhishthira Maharaj, he asks, the two questions are very related. And this is again about caring for those who are not in the position to be cared for, or who are in a position of vulnerability. That's the whole point here. And that's why this is such an important thing. And the value that Bhagavatam teaches us is to be broad-hearted, magnanimous, not narrow-minded, and not self-absorbed. It's just all about me. It's just about what I can get from the temple. It's what prasadam I'm going to get. I need to be in front of the queue. I need to do this. I need to do that. And this is the last of the last. He asked this question. Or is it that you are feeling empty for all time because you might have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Krishna? Oh, my brother Arjuna, I can think of no other reason for your becoming so dejected. So after almost 10 questions have been asked, the 11th question is the mother of all questions, isn't it? He says that, I think, Yudhishthira Maharaj says, this must be the reason why you're really dejected. Because actually, you have now lost Krishna because Krishna has disappeared and you're bereft of your most intimate friend. Now, one thing we should remember is, we also become dejected when loved ones leave us. That is true. It's a great source of dejection for us. But we should remember that we cannot do anything about that, because no one is going to escape death. Narada Muni says so nicely in the 13th chapter, 41st verse. He says everyone is ruled by Kala, Karma and Guna. So if you are in that net, how can you save someone also? He's telling Yudhishthira Maharaj this because Yudhishthira Maharaj is so worried about what has happened to his uncle. And he's politely telling him, listen, this Kala, Guna and Karma, you are also in that space. So what are you going to do? You can't help him. There's this story about a fish who was caught in the net with the other fish. And when they were caught, this fish told the other fish, don't worry, brother, I'll take you out of this net. And the other fish said, you're such a fool, you're also in the net. If we are in the net, we cannot help each other. But we can help each other when we turn to Krishna and when we turn to the Guru Parampara. Because when we turn to Sastras, when we turn to Sadhus, we turn to Gurus, then you will find that Guru, Sadhu and Sastra, they help guide us through this difficult time of loss. We are all going to lose something, but our greatest loss is if we lose Krishna. That is our greatest loss. The reason why devotees right now, you have tolerated me for so long, right? And prasadam is there and you must be thinking, when is he going to stop? I'm going to stop soon. The reason why you could tolerate so much is because the deities are in front of you. Because they are giving you darshan. You are able to tolerate because Bhagavatam is being spoken. And Bhagavatam is keeping us together. That's why without Krishna, then all dejection will come to us. The gopis sing so beautifully. Aditiyad bhavan ahanikananam trute yugayate tvam apashyatam kutilakuntalam shrimukam chate jara udishitham pakshmakridrisham tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibiriditam kalmasapaham shravanamangalam Shrimadattatam bhuvi karanantiye bhurida janaha. Look at the mood of the gopis. They are cursing Brahma because whenever they have to blink, their blinking feels like a yuga for them. Whenever Krishna leaves in the morning, it feels like a yuga for them. I always like this verse because I think to myself, I'm blinking all the time. And I'm looking at the deities, I blink and I don't feel any separation. But the moment I feel I need prasadam, then I feel very separated from prasadam. That's a different thing altogether. So the point of this entire discussion is that the ultimate solution for all our dejection is actually devotional service. It is. With sincerity and devotion, we simply have to follow the process. We don't have to complicate the process. And we must have this one conviction, and this is an important conviction. Whatever Prabhupada has given us is complete. It is complete. As the next generation and next generation comes, the challenge for each generation will be, let's tinkle with it. Let's add something else. Let's take a little bit of here and there. Prabhupada gave it, but there's a little bit more we have to look at. That will cause us dejection. That will destroy our peace. Whatever Srila Prabhupada has given for all times, in all places, and all circumstances, I'm just paraphrasing the first Chatushloka of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is complete. We do not have to go beyond Bhagavatam. Sometimes devotees come and tell me, Prabhu, I finished Bhagavatam, can I read something else? I just tell them, read Bhagavatam again. Because when we go back to Bhagavatam, there's something we haven't understood. Bhagavatam is an ocean. You can go back to it every time. You can go back to the same shloka tomorrow, and you'll find a different realization that's coming. You can go and read the same shloka 100 times, and you'll find it is perfect. The Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we've been chanting it ad nauseam. Does anyone feel like we can't do it? No. What happens if we did now 15 minutes of Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola? What'll happen? You'll never, first of all, I'll never be invited for the retreat. And the second thing that'll happen is, Coca-Cola is not going to appear in front of you. It's not, it's just going to be where it is. But if you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, then Krishna appears before us. He's present before us. So, we should live the way the gopis and the Vrindavan Vasis lived. In the evenings, they would come out and they would sit down, and you know what they would do? They would gossip. The technical word for gossip is two people speak about the third person, but very important caveat, the third person cannot be there. Right? You all know that, right? Two of us talk, third person just stepped out, okay, let's talk, and then we come back. So all the Vrindavan Vasis, they would come together, and they would all talk about the third person, and they would talk about Krishna. That's all they did. Who is it who sang that? Bilva Mangal Thakur. Grahe Grahe Gopavadhu Kadambe Sarve Militva Samavapya Yogam Punyani Namani Patanti Nityam Govinda Damo Dharmadaveti. Grahe Grahe Gopavadhu Kadambe. In the evenings, all the different houses, they would all come out. The residents would come out. They would sit together. And instead of discussing any mundane topics, they would speak about Krishna. And that's why this retreat is so sublime. Because there's not an inch of this retreat that doesn't give you the opportunity to speak about Krishna. And by the way, that opportunity that you get is also Krishna. Krishna is known in Bhagavatam as Samanjasa. Samanjasa means source of opportunities. Right? This is a prayer from Vritrasur in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, we should just remember that for all the dejections that we discussed, there is always one solution. And devotional service is the most powerful. I leave you with this beautiful verse. Shall we chant this verse? It has such wonderful meaning. Tadeva ramyam ruchiram navam navam Tadeva shashvam manaso maho sarvam Tadeva shokha navaso shalanrinam Yaduttama shloka yasho anugiyate. See the translation. Those words describing the glories of the all-famous personality of Godhead are attractive, relishable, and ever fresh. Indeed, such words are a perpetual festival for the mind, and they dry up the ocean of misery. this is the retreat that we are in. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki. To the organizers, Prabhu, is prasadam ready?
It's at 1.
It's at 1, okay. So, anyone has questions? Otherwise, this is a slot for Kirtan. So, yes, some realizations. Lakshminath Prabhu. Maybe I'll take 2 or 3 and then we can do some Kirtan to end our time together. Can I also extend an invitation to all the exalted souls here? Please come to Singapore when you can. Right, we don't have Harinam. We can't, oh yes. Lakshmimani Prabhu is the one source of great inspiration for us. Every year she's there. Every year she's there. So that's great. Please come. You can't distribute books. You have to come through without devotee clothes. I'm not discouraging you, I'm just telling you that. But once you come in, then you can do everything else. And we will be very happy because we are a desert. Lakshminath Prabhu, please.
Well, this is in regards to the situation I was put in regards to, we're saying perception.
Okay, good.
You know,
You're sharing an experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
The sannyasi had, the clothes of the ladies and
Right,
people had
right.
perception. So I got a phone call, and it's one of my god sisters. She's at her sister's place, but her husband's gone to work, so she doesn't have a vehicle. But this person, this god sister, needs to go to the airport. So she wants me to drive her to the airport. My wife is also working. I happen to be at home. So I'm thinking, what's the perception here, right? I'm driving with this lady all by myself. Someone sees me. Hey, did you see Lakshmana? What's he doing with that girl? Where's his wife? So I had to refuse. She was mad like anything, right? But I was put in this awkward situation. I felt bad, but I said, I can't do this. It's just not. I said, I'll pay you a taxi if you want, but I'm not driving you.
Did she accept it, Prabhu?
No, I'll pay my own.
Okay.
I'll pay my own taxi, but it was. I think she'll be mad
No,
now.
it's a point you've raised.
But
It can happen.
Yeah, but it's like the perception will last much longer
Yes.
than her being mad at me.
Thank you for sharing that, Prabhu. Vaishnavis, maybe on this side, it'd be nice to hear from you. Prabhu, did someone put up their hands? Let's go with that side. I thought someone raised their hands. Oh, no one did. Okay, then that's fine.
Since it's here,
Okay, fine.
it was a beautiful class. Thank you. We are taking so many realizations from this class, and it does happen all the time that, for little things you're like, okay, you're not
Yes.
going to work it out, but we need to hear those reminders often, and we need to cherish this kind of sangha as much as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll share the slides so you can have the slides. Anyone else? Maybe one more? Prabhu, please. Yes, you'll be putting up your hand.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Dhanavad Prabhu for a profound
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, one point on the charity to the needy. I often come across several people, but can you please elaborate on this in 2 minutes more?
Prabhu, a bit louder. You know why?
Can you please
My ears are
elaborate?
all blocked.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. Can you please elaborate on that needy? How should I pursue who is needy? Because
You may not know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So often I come across people who are just looking for food, and that food is not the prasadam that I'm going
Yes.
to offer.
Yes.
And the money that I'm going to give them is not the needy that they're going to suffice their
Yes.
bread and butter, but
The safest way to understand what is the need of the hour or who needs something is probably to understand, what is required in a certain place. Sometimes personally I find it difficult to assess an individual's need. You may not have a relationship with the person, so you don't know the person from a bar of soap, and that's very difficult actually. But if you do know, for example, that there's a need of an organization, that the organization, for example, goes out and it distributes prasad, for example, to a certain place, and you see it and you experience it and you see that it has impact, then your understanding of the needs becomes much clearer. And you are in a better position to make an informed decision whether you want to be contributive to that particular project. Because obviously there's a need, it is bona fide, it is working, you see tangible results from it, then you make the call. So that's a safer way of doing it. Which is why Srila Prabhupada created our society. If you think of the genius in which Srila Prabhupada applied his mind to a society, it is so deeply layered. In any society that functions well, questions about whether we should do something, should not do something, anybody walking in will be able to understand the need of a society by seeing the inhabitants of the society. And that will determine the need. That's a useful formula to use.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Prabhu, in the context of the reason for feeling rejected, that somebody said or did something to you, please help me balance out two aspects of teaching. One is this fact that somebody did something to you, it's just they're just instruments and it's karmic reaction coming in. The other thing that we hear about is there's always a free will associated. Should I act in a particular way or not? So what I get confused and trying to balance out in my mind is, okay, somebody did something, it was my own karmas, fine. But that person also had a free will, right, to do that or not.
But he didn't. He didn't. So at that point of time, your mind should stop. Because if you keep thinking of that, your mind goes into speculative mode. Instead of remembering Krishna, you will be conscious of that person. International Society for that person, consciousness. And the whole day you carry that person in the mind. You see the point? You see, two brahmacharis were from the ashram. And they had crossed over in the old days to get wood for the ashram. After they crossed over, they were coming back. The river was high. There was a young girl seated there, and she was crying. They are brahmacharis. One brahmachari went up to her and said, "Can I help you? Why you are crying?" And she said, "When I crossed the river earlier, it was not on high tide, but now it is, and I can't cross back. It's getting late. How do I get back to my village?" The first brahmachari said, "I have no choice. I have to help you then." Second brahmachari says, "This is way against the ashram. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this." But he said, "She's in a very dire situation. There's no one around. I'm just going to carry, and I'm going to put her across." And they did that, and they walked back. And all the way, the second brahmachari kept saying, "Shouldn't have done that. I'm going to tell spiritual master." And they go back. And the spiritual master sits there and says, "How was your day, boys?" And he says, and the second brahmachari says, "I have a complaint to make. This is what he did. This is what he did." And the spiritual master became quiet. And then he said, "You, the first boy, you carried her from this end of the river to the other river." Then he turned to the other boy. He said, "You carried her from that river right into this ashram." Because very often, when we start asking questions like, "Oh, he had the free will, why did he say this to me?" You'll never get an answer to that problem. You will never. Instead of wasting our time on that, better you chant Krishna's names. That time you spend thinking why he did this one, why he did that, you could have learned one shloka from Bhagavatam. And it will give you so much more peace to learn it, to apply it, and to chant it. I have a formula I use. Every time my mind gives me disturbances, I chant chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15 Bhagavad Gita. I chant certain shlokas from Bhagavatam that I find inspirational. I find it really helps. After a while, the mind says, "Oh, okay, now I have to keep quiet. He's just going on with Bhagavatam, okay, I have to keep quiet." It helps. Really, honestly, Bhagavatam, Prabhupada's books, right, they really help. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They're not just meant to study. Tat Shranavan Supatan Vicharana Paro. You must hear them, then you must repeat what you hear and recite them, then Vicharana Paro. Vicharana means you must analyze, you must scrutinizingly study. That's the word Prabhupada used. The more we scrutinizingly study, the more peaceful we become. Is that helpful?
Very much. Thank you so
Very
much.
nice. Very nice. Shall we chant Krishna's names? I think it's a good way to end the day.